Okay, last one for the day. Can't believe this. I'm never this on it. This one is a little bit more, well, it is a lot more of a serious topic, but it does tie to some of the conversation that we're having around eating and live to eat, eat to live. So this one, I want to definitely hear INTJ's thoughts on this, male and female. However, I think it probably, if it does resonate with INTJs, it probably will be on the female side. But the concept of eating disorders. So I'll preface this by saying by no means am I a doctor or any sort of healthcare provider that is providing any sort of technical knowledge on this. This is completely experiential for myself, and I feel it's something that isn't necessarily talked about a ton, and there might be a correlation between our personality types and having an eating disorder. So when I'm saying eating disorder, I am meaning anorexia and bulimia, because unless people come up and mention otherwise, I feel that overeating is not one of our problems. So for myself, I definitely went through periods of time where I had an eating disorder. And I didn't label it at the time because it was tied to, like I've mentioned in other videos, lack of appetite. So if you don't have an appetite, it's kind of easy to slip into something that is becoming restrictive. So when you think about it for a bit, from my personal experience, if stress and anxiety cause me to not be hungry and I have to remember to eat, plus if I have no appetite, I'm not interested in eating anything, there's nothing that is making me excited to eat, you are just putting in the necessities. So if you're stressed already and your propensity is to be not looking for food, your stomach is getting smaller, and you're also trying to make sense of things. So one thing I feel for myself, at least, is it was a struggle for me to understand how to deal with lack of control. Control was a very huge thing in my life. So when major incidents came into life, like say when I got pregnant and I wasn't expecting it, and being in university, trying to deal with living on student loans, these are triggers that it almost becomes a perfect storm for inadvertently getting into a eating disorder state. So I can't remember, I believe I mentioned about how once my oldest son was, or there's a point to this, once my oldest son was born and I was trying to make sense, I didn't want children necessarily, I wanted 5 dogs, how I found respite in going for walks, because that was a way of having my own quiet time. He would fall asleep in the walk, and therefore, so I am going to be exerting energy, plus I'm not eating because I'm not hungry, and no one is around to notice that I'm not eating. And it becomes a weird cycle where and then people start commenting on that, whether or not you've lost weight, positive or negative. And for myself, it wasn't something that I ever thought about before at all. And so when they brought it to mind, what I heard is if I actually did start having, like if I was hungry and I was eating something, they're like, oh good, you're starting to put on weight, you can tell. And it's like, again, it's a control thing. I found for myself that I went from being like, that's a negative. So my lack of emotional level, I guess, took that as actually a slight, because I was hypersensitized to anything that could be considered criticism because I was already like in a very acute stress state. And so it became this nutty, constant cycle that it was difficult to get out of. I definitely wasn't a person that was one of, you know, the poor victims of these diseases where they end up on a feeding tube or anything like that. By no means I was like that. But the psychology within it, when I looked into it finally, because I'm like, maybe this is an actual thing for myself, and I realized that I really resonated with some of the key features that come up. So that was a little bit of a scary moment for me. So moving forward, it was great as I moved on through developing more of my emotional side and giving myself more care and also a little bit more self-worth in my own eyes. There was more of a balance that came out of that, and I was able to have a bit more of an equilibrium. Excuse me. So I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has similar thoughts or divergent thoughts on that. I mean, this is totally open for discussion. As always, if you have video requests or comments, please put them in. Just put video request in at the beginning. So thanks so much. And that is it for today.